You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a wash machine.
Fonte with a scooping
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
Отдача, Остин! Все-таки забил!
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0! Buffon shot! Oh my word!
Unbelievable. He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. Really very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show. And no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope you enjoy it. And we are here this week to talk about perfectly executed game plans that you spend weeks or maybe just days preparing and getting in line, and it all going off exactly as you would have hoped. Only that's not what happened. After several weeks of preparation, of almost, I won't say flawless preseason, but a pretty good preseason, Saints showed up to Burnley, and it all went wrong. From the weather to Pierre-Emile Højbjerg's health to just the way the game played out. It just didn't go well. And I think that's all we can say at this point, is that it's for the first game. It's a long season. There's plenty of time and plenty of, I think, hope that the team will turn it around. And it's also maybe a pretty decent reality check. But we will talk about that with Luke Osman. You probably know Luke's writing mostly from Read Southampton. You can find it. You can find him, I should say, on Twitter at Luke Osman RS and at Read Southampton. And if you want to get in touch with him that way, that is good. If you want to write for Read Southampton, that is there. But mostly, he has been putting out some outstanding articles recently, and you should be sure to check them out. So head over there to do that. And I just wanted to say a couple of things before we get to the podcast with him, is that Jeremy Orr, a Bay Area Southampton fan, drove down to my house yesterday. He is the first other Southampton fan I have welcomed into my home. We then got in the car and drove further south to Los Angeles to watch Josh Sims hopefully make his MLS debut with very little fanfare from the New York Red Bulls. And the problem is that he wasn't making his debut. In fact, he wasn't on the bench, nor do I think he was actually in the building. But Jimmy and I had a great time anyway. It was good to see the stadium. I'd never been in that stadium before. It was a lot of fun, and I think we enjoyed it. I had a good time. I really enjoyed getting up and going to school today. My first day with students back. It was fantastic. And even more fantastic was when we got home just after midnight last night to my house from Los Angeles. My dog got sprayed by a skunk, so that was great. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day. It basically only gets better from here, and that's because I have this conversation with Luke Osman. But one more thing before we get there, though. I just wanted to give a shout out to the newest patron of the show, Luke Millard. Thank you so much, Luke, for joining Patreon and supporting the show. It's been great to have a chat with you privately, but I just wanted to publicly say thanks. So if you want to get involved like Luke, get access to extra podcasts, a private chat, things like that, you can do that at patreon.com/SFC delivery. But if you don't want to do that, that's also fine. Just enjoy the show, because that is really what is most important. All right. So here's my conversation with Luke Osman. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Luke Osman. You can find him on Twitter at Luke Osman RS. You can get his writing at Read Southampton and several other outlets. Luke, you were just on a couple of weeks ago for the season preview, or we recorded a couple of weeks ago. It went out last week, but welcome back, and welcome back to the 2019-2020 season.
Thank you very much for having me. And it's a shame that we can't speak about a win or even a draw on the first game of the season, but it's good to be back.
I remember thinking, last year, thinking back to where I was when I watched the opening game of the season, and just went like, man, like that was really boring and really bad. And then yesterday, wishing it could be really boring and really bad, because it was just really bad and not boring. And for all the wrong reasons, but it is what it is. And I guess it's if we start slow, we just have to build and finish, but we'll get into it. I mean, you've been on recently, but anything maybe Read Southampton wise or anything else, anything new or exciting in with you?
Yeah, so with regards to Read Southampton, in line with the start of the season, we, as Fresh Press Media, the company, we're changing our approach. So we're leading with more fan-based and opinion-driven content. So that should resonate with maybe the club's supporter base a little bit more. And as such, I'll be running Read Southampton on a full-time basis now. So it's quite an exciting project. We're kind of hoping to become the hub of Saints' media, not necessarily by news and new information, but by opinion and analysis. So anyone's welcome to write for us as well. Just get in contact with me or, however you want, because the more Saints fans we've got writing for us, the better. And I'd love to hear from anyone who's keen.
All right. Is Twitter the best way for them to get in contact with you about that?
Yeah, Twitter's the best way. At Luke Osman RS, you can DM me, or you can alternatively email me, luke@freshpressuk.com.
All right. I will put links to that in the show notes, and we'll make sure that people get in touch with you if they want. And that is a big change, because it used to be kind of, you guys used to break news a lot, and I noticed a lot even with your articles recently. They've been really around, I think, a lot of the new transfers. You put together pretty substantial pieces of analysis on their play and talking to maybe journalists that had covered them before. And I think that's the stuff that me personally, that's the stuff I enjoy reading. And I think I think it shows that, your writing is great, and now you get to show it a little bit. And I think that's nice. I hope that sounds correct or comes off the right way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's that kind of approach now that allows writers like myself to have a little bit more freedom to give our own verdicts. The stuff with regards to talking to journalists or doing player analysis had always existed, but it hadn't really been the focal point.
Okay.
So now we get to really hone in on original content and giving our opinion on the news that breaks instead of just breaking it. So hopefully that comes across as a bit more enjoyable for Saints supporters to read, and I'm looking forward to continuing.
All right. Well, I'm on that note, will you be putting together something on Danzo coming in, or is that will somebody else be on that?
Yeah, we'll be looking at what we can do on Danzo. I'll try to do a little bit more analysis on his sort of style of play, but where the transfer came about so quickly, it was all a bit of a whirlwind how it all came about, and then the Burnley game was upon us. But no, I've looked into Danzo. I've seen him play a few times before, but I'll be looking to do some more in-depth analysis on him. So look out for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be looking forward to it. I guess for the show this week, we have to talk about the close of the transfer window. We obviously have to talk about the match that was Burnley away, and there's some other news around Saints, and maybe we should lead with it because it's things are bigger than football. But Justin Gladys, who was longtime the PA announcer at the stadium, sadly it was announced that he passed away. I found out about it yesterday just before the game, and I'm not a season ticket holder, so I haven't been around. I haven't had maybe an interaction, or even I don't even know if I've ever heard him on the PA at the stadium. But for you, who's had a season ticket for several years, do you have memories or anything that jumps to mind when you think about the kind of the impact he had just on the fans or on the team or on match day or whatever it was?
Yeah, it was really sad news about Justin. I think it came as a shock for a lot of people. I never met him personally or really came into contact with him, but those who did only have good things to sort of say about him and their interactions with him. He seemed like a really nice and genuine man, and his voice over time became sort of synonymous with the lads walking out of the tunnel at St Mary's before games kicked off, and he'll be a big loss to match days. Of course, my thoughts and condolences go out to all of his loved ones and his friends and those who were close with him, and I'm sure everyone will be appreciative of all the well wishes and the fond memories that have been put forward on things like social media. And yeah, it's very sad, but thoughts go out to his loved ones and those who've lost someone who they're very, very close with. Yeah,
absolutely. Losing someone's not easy, and for us as fans who have a certain type of connection with him, that pales in comparison to what his family is going through. So definitely. Our thoughts are with them, and we hope that they're. I just hope everybody's doing okay, because it's not easy, and it's not something you wish on anybody. And and I just hope that he's that they're all doing okay. But I mean, for over 19 years as the PA announcer, he's definitely had an impact on all of us. And even I can say that watching on TV, the coverage always jumps to in as the guys are walking out, and you can hear him over the PA on TV even. And so that in and of itself next week will be different, and it will be noticeable, and it'll be I'm sure difficult for a lot of people around the club who were close to him and definitely his family. So I hope everybody is like I said, I hope everybody's doing all right. And yeah, it's terrible news.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it is very, very sad, and we can only sort of think of and hope that everyone sort of associated with him is okay. It will feel weird for that Liverpool game hearing another voice over the tannoy, but I'm sure the club will do something to commemorate him, and he won't be forgotten in a hurry.
Right. I mean, I don't know how to transition from that to the game, but we're going to do it. Basically, I mean, it's the first game of the season. You would hope that it would start a little bit better than it did, but it really wasn't great. First off, the team sheet, the news that Højbjerg couldn't start. He was ill or not feeling well or something. I think that was initially the first thing that jumped out to me on the when the team sheet was released. But for you, when you see the team that is starting, were you a bit disappointed that it was three at the back, or was that kind of predictable? Or was there anything else there that you thought maybe shouldn't have happened?
I thought the formation was okay. I'm not the biggest fan of five at the back, and I personally prefer to see natural wide players in the attacking roles, especially now that we've got the likes of Djenepo and Boufal at our disposal. But it was kind of expected after the two friendlies against Feyenoord and Cologne, because they saw the same shape. I was initially, I think, like everyone else, bemused by Højbjerg's exclusion, but it turns out that he was ill, so I guess it's understandable that he didn't have the capacity to start the game. So, in all honesty, the only change I'd have made, aside from perhaps the system, would have been Yoshida instead of Stevens in the back three. But aside from that, I didn't really have all that many qualms with the team sheet that Ralph put out.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit interesting as well. Is Yoshida seemed to have been playing quite a bit, and this is the first time I've been able to watch the team. The friendlies weren't televised internationally, and so this is the really the first look I've had other than highlights. But I would have expected Yoshida to be in there, but he wasn't chosen, and so we have to go with it. And I saw some people, unhappy with Jack Stevens, but I don't know who to put blame on, and we'll get to that stuff. But I mean, I was just happy that we had those attacking players, that Che Adams, Danny Ings, and Nathan Redmond up top. I thought we would have caused them more trouble going forward than we did. But yeah, and I think that the formation itself leaves you exposed a little bit in midfield, and I think that's something we know. And I don't know if that. Luckily, Burnley didn't try to do that. They didn't try to play through the midfield. They just went over the top constantly, which I thought we would have been better equipped to deal with a little bit. But there you go. Were you happy to see Djenepo on the bench, or surprised at all, or do you think he would make the bench just based on the fact that he's been in training now for a couple of weeks and made a brief appearance in the last friendly?
Yeah, I mean, I was pleased to see him on the bench. I think that he will find himself out of the starting lineup quite often throughout this season, just because of the attacking players that we do have at our disposal. I would have liked to have seen him yesterday, if I'm honest. I think that perhaps his pace and his dribbling quality would have helped us break down Burnley a little bit more. But I didn't expect him to start, and I don't expect him to for a little while. I think it's important with a player like that to give him some time to bed in and to settle, but it's good to see him on the bench. And ultimately, with regards to our attacking depth now, one senior player will miss out. Yesterday we had Boufal, Djenepo and Obafemi on the bench, and it meant that Shane Long and Stuart Armstrong, for that matter, weren't actually in the matchday 18. So it's a reflection of the strength and depth that we've got, but we looked toothless yesterday, so it's difficult to really just sort of take the positives from that and from that depth when performance was as poor as it was.
Yeah, and I was thinking all summer, looking at our midfield and looking at the formations we've been playing, that midfield was our strongest area, maybe of the team, maybe the most solid. But then all of a sudden you have an ill Pierre-Emile Højbjerg still in the match day 18, because if something happens to James Ward-Prowse or Romeu, who else are you going to bring in? I mean, there's nobody else on the bench that's going to come in and do that. And Armstrong wasn't there. So maybe slightly worrying, but maybe it's just panic and nitpicking a little bit, but we'll figure it out. I'm sure as we move along. Overall, I don't think there was much to complain about. And I think there's going to be a lot of competition for places, especially in those attacking areas, which will be good. Getting into the first half, was there anything really that stood out to you in terms of what Saints did well at all, or was it? Because if I'm really honest, if I didn't know who the manager was, and I would just turn the game on, there wasn't a huge amount of difference maybe between what we saw last season under Hughes, or even maybe the season before under Pellegrino, and what we saw yesterday for large parts. We had a lot of possession. We didn't really press very well. We didn't force them into very many mistakes. I think a lot of that maybe was due to them just going long quite a bit. But I don't know. What did you make of the first half, and kind of what stood out to you?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The press wasn't anywhere near as intense. And against Burnley, the approach that we tend to favour was always going to be a bit difficult, because more often than not, when you press opponents into either making a mistake through hesitation on the ball, or that they send a long ball upfield, you have that chance of regaining possession and then winning that second ball. But unfortunately, Burnley are probably the best long ball team in the league. So we found ourselves kind of, in some parts, mimicking how they approach the game tactically. And no one can really outdo a Sean Dyche team when it comes to this brand of football. Mm-hmm. So a key part of Hasenhüttl's style is, and he alluded to this in a recent interview with the Daily Mail, is that when a long ball upfield is played, if possession's lost, a counter press can be initiated and we can suffocate teams high up the pitch. But with Burnley, long balls are their bread and butter. So the likes of James Tarkowski and Ben Mee were excellent yesterday, and they snuffed out any danger. Uh-huh. So when those balls are played and they can deal with them with relative ease, the likes of Danny Ings and Shay Adams became progressively quiet as the game went on.
Yeah, I think it leads to them just running themselves into the ground and chasing what essentially becomes lost causes. And obviously it's not what you want, and it kind of took our approach away. And we have a pretty good question from a Burnley fan that we'll get to a little bit later. But one thing that I noticed, that a couple of times we switched the ball from left to right, got Valerie on the ball kind of at an advanced position, and I thought that's kind of what gave us our first real chance of the game. Adams went just wide from a cross, and I'll be honest, we were 6 or 7 minutes in and we hadn't scored, and Adams had missed that early chance, and I kind of thought, like, oh no, like this is not good, because we haven't gotten ahead and gotten on the front foot. And sometimes I think that's all it takes, and it didn't happen. But I don't know. I just the ability to switch the ball like that and change kind of the focus of the defense, I thought was good, but I don't think we did it kind of nearly enough. And I'm not really sure we created enough clear opportunities to have a real shot at goal rather than just maybe having a half chance or so. Yeah, exactly. And I think that even in those kind of situations, if you put in a good ball into the box, as Valerie did for Adams, you need to make those chances count, because, as I said, Burnley are good in the air. Burnley know how to cope with crosses at the best of times, and they're a good physical team. Hasenhüttl's style works best when there's space to burst into and when the other team has a greater share of the ball. But Burnley don't care about possession. They don't push high up the pitch as such, so there's little space in behind to play the vertical penetrative passes that this team tends to now under Hasenhüttl. Mm-hmm. We seemed quite in control and untested until the goal actually went in. But Burnley seemed pretty comfortable with just sitting back and soaking up the pressure, letting us keep the ball without really doing a lot with it. So we were looking towards sort of finding the wings a little bit more, but ultimately I think Burnley clocked on to what we were trying to do quickly, and after Valerie's ball into the box, there wasn't really another good one. Right. Kind of the first real moment of concern for me defensively was Angus Gunn came for a ball, and I thought for sure he carried it outside the area. I thought we were going to be punished for that right away, especially with VAR looking at stuff and it's a clear and obvious error, they're gonna flag it, and it didn't happen. So I was happy that didn't go, but it was just one of those instances where like this is too early in the season. It's too early in the match to be kind of giving away chances or even making it close. There was a kind of a decent shot after that from James Ward-Prowse, just happened to be right at Pope. And then I think we get to the part where I think fans are I mean, I'll ask you, do you see it sometimes on Twitter or social media or just even in person where we don't like Jack Stephens necessarily? Some people have, we have memories of Jack Stephens making mistakes. And so when he slips and Burnley go in, even though it's eventually flagged offside, where from now on, Jack Stephens is going to take the blame for mistakes that maybe aren't his. Do you see it that way, or is that me just going too far and trying to defend him a little bit when that's unnecessary?
I think there's a balance between the two. If I'm honest, I think that over time he has become something of a scapegoat, but I'd also say that that's because he is the defender, in my opinion, who makes the most glaring mistakes. And for me, I don't think he should be anywhere near the first team. In an ideal world, we'd have sold him in the summer. I think that he's a championship defender at best. But ironically, and I don't mean this as a compliment towards him, not that would be a bad thing, but it's more a reflection of how bad our defenders were yesterday. He was probably the best of the three. And, you know, that incident where Wood did eventually tap home after Barnes had run through, it was kind of symbolic of Stephens. It was that he got let off the hook with regards to VAR, but that slip is something, and it's the type of mistake that we've seen so often from him. And so often he has cost us points in valuable situations that reputation has become associated with him, and those mistakes do come about. So he is scapegoated. When you look at the team, you do think, oh, you know, it's good, but then you've got Stephens. Kind of, why are we playing with 10 men? And I am very much of the opinion that he shouldn't be anywhere near the first team. I don't think Maya Yoshida's an outstanding centre-back by any means, but I think he's a better player. And in turn, that means that fans do kind of look towards Stephens, whether they mean to or not, as the culprit for a lot of our downfalls. Now, yesterday, I think that he didn't have a good game, but no one did. And I'd say that out of him, Bednarek and Vestergaard, he was probably the defender who was the least worst, if you like. Yeah,
I'm with you there. And like you said, the mistakes that he has made in the past definitely mean that we look at him as mistake prone. And just like, you know, Mayashida, I think, at least for me, has played himself out of that, but it's taken years, you know, and still, you know, I don't think a lot of us trust him as the rock at the back. I don't think he is that. I still think he's there. There's the possibility that he makes a mistake maybe, or something like that. But I think it's taken a long time for him to change people's minds. And I think with Stephens, it's going to be the same thing, but I don't think we're going to have the time with him to do that. I don't think he'll see much of the team once Danzo comes in, I think, and we'll talk more about him because I have questions about Danzo, and maybe we can or can't answer at this point, but we'll get to it a little bit later. But like you said, I was slightly impressed with Stephens yesterday, just because he seemed to do a lot of sweeping up behind Bednarek and Vestergaard as they would step out, not to press somebody, but to step out to the ball, and the ball would kind of go in behind, and Stephens would just come over and kind of knock it out of play and call it good. And I think that was good enough. There was a lot of no nonsense kind of defending from our back three, I think, and I thought that was just play it safe, just keep it simple. You don't have to. We don't have to try to play these tricky passes in situations. We can just kind of get set and defend. Unfortunately, you're doing that against Burnley, who are, you know, probably the best at breaking that down just by putting balls in the box and seeing what happens. But I don't know. Would you say that we were the better team in the first half? I mean, we go in 0-0 at halftime, but I thought that even though the press wasn't working, I still thought that we were kind of in control for the most part, even if we didn't create enough chances for us to really be happy. And even if we really didn't look necessarily like a Hasenhüttl type team that we've seen so often down the stretch last year and even during preseason this year.
Yeah, I think it very much had the essence of first game of the season. I think that there were a lot of mistimed passes. I think at times both teams took their foot off the gas, and mistakes did sort of come about. I don't personally think that we were the better team. I thought it was quite evenly matched throughout, and it was just sort of in the second half when Vestergaard obviously made that mistake and Barnes scored that the kind of the tide changed. But it just seemed a very stagnant game. It seemed like it was just sort of heading towards a 0-0 or a narrow 1-0 either way, and it was quite dull. It was quite bland. I don't think either team attacked with any real urgency. I think that we've become sort of associated with that pressing, high-intensity brand of football, and we weren't really able to employ it because of the factors that I mentioned earlier about how Burnley were quite comfortable with going long. So forcing them into mistakes is often quite a difficult thing. But still, we looked toothless, I think, and Burnley didn't exactly look threatening in the first half anyway. But obviously, after the interval, it was a different story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so often we've seen, at least my remembrance of last season and maybe the past couple, was after halftime, we never really seemed to come out and be fired up. We seemed to be kind of slow coming out of halftime, slow restarting the game under previous management. And then under Hasenhüttl, that was one of the things that I thought was a change. With they went in at halftime, there was always something they came out and did better in the second half, and it just didn't happen today or yesterday or whenever by the time you listen to this. And so for me, that was maybe something that was a little bit concerning. I was happy enough, I guess, to go in. You're away. It's the first game of the season. It didn't go well, but it's still, you're still in the game. You still have a point. You can still count it as if you draw your away games, I guess you'll be I guess somewhat happy. And I think, just kind of off topic, but last year, I think the previous season, when we went to Burnley away, it was freezing. It was like below zero or close. And one of the things that I was kind of hoping for the traveling fans was that it was going to be nice. And instead it was just pouring rain and not warm at all. So, sorry everyone. You did all that, you drove all the way there, and then you had to put up with the crappy game and the weather. So, enjoy that. But, I don't know, anything else that needs talking about in the first half, or should we move on to the second half and kind of get into some of these things that maybe we don't necessarily want to talk about as much?
Yeah, I think that, in all honesty, that was sort of the tale of the first half, pretty well put. For me, actually, at half-time, I think that Hasenhüttl needed to make at least one substitute. I think that it became clear that we weren't breaking down Burnley in that first half, and although you can't really legislate for the individual errors that would follow, I think he could have managed the game a little bit better. I'm not normally critical of Hasenhüttl because I think he very rarely puts a foot wrong with us, but in my opinion, he should have introduced either Boufal or Djenepo for rings at half-time and maybe played with orthodox wide players behind Adams, because we needed dribblers and we needed players who could evade challenges and break lines with individual quality. But I felt Ralph let us fall behind a little bit before actually being proactive in his changes, which was unlike him.
Is there any reason for that, or is it just maybe is it just a mistake? Everybody makes them, but up until now, I think it's really been difficult to criticize much of what he's done. Do you think it was just a case of wanting to give that front three another 15 minutes together to try to create something, or do you? I guess we're just speculating on what his thought process was, but do you have any idea as to why he did that?
Yeah, I think it might have been as simple as trying to give sort of the likes of Ings, Redmond and Adams that time to gel. They looked very good together as a trio in pre-season, so it's definitely understandable, but some games require that proactivity, that in-game management, and I felt as though we needed to make a change a bit earlier, and we needed to really put Burnley on the back foot instead of allowing them to continuously grow into the game and play in a style of match and the brand of football that suits them so well.
Now, as the second half kind of went on, the game seemed a bit more open, maybe a little bit more stretched, and I thought that was when we were going to be, stronger. I thought that was going to be good for us, because I thought it was going to give us, more opportunity to be able to press, but it still didn't. It seemed just for a while there, counterattack and then counterattack, and I don't know. I thought we would have been able to deal with that a little bit better than we did, but into the 63rd minute, I saw people blame both Vestergaard and Gunn. Maybe Gunn could have done better. Initially, I didn't think Gunn had anything to do with it. I thought that ball needs to be headed away and then everybody's fine. But maybe I just put my head down after Vestergaard missed it, and then I didn't see what Gunn did there. But in terms of that first goal from Barnes, who always seems to score against us, does that fall on Vestergaard for you, or is that Gunn, or is the blame shared because nothing's black and white really?
I think, to tell you the truth, I think it is Vestergaard mainly. I think that it's not a case of Gunn being completely to blame. I do feel as though he could have done a little bit better with the shot. I think that for a striker to score from about 15 yards, for it to actually go through a goalkeeper's legs, I question, was the goalkeeper focused? Was he on his toes? Was he able to get down quick enough? So I think that questions can be asked of Gunn, but even more questions should be asked of Vestergaard, because that is a routine ball. You know exactly what you're going to get from Burnley. They're going to send high balls up to you. You as a central defender need to be prepared for that. And I don't even have a clue what he was trying to do. He was nowhere near that ball when he attempted to head it. And he could have done with just sort of taking a little bit of a step back, backtracking a little bit. And then that chance never happens. So for me, I'm a big fan of Vestergaard. I do actually think that he has got a lot to offer us. I think that towards the end of the season when he wasn't in the team, we did miss him. Mm-hmm. But that's not acceptable. It's not excusable at this level. And it had shades of that mistake he made away at Cardiff in Hasenhüttl's first game. And ultimately, his mistake did turn the tide of the match, and it was the catalyst for our demise in that fixture. Yeah,
him missing that header yesterday, and then Barnes being able to slot it away, really, everything crumbled after that. And it's just a routine mistake, but maybe it's the weather, maybe it's the wind, whatever it is, but he's got to know that. He's got to know that what he's dealing with, and just play it safe. And I don't think it was laziness or anything like that. I just think it was a misjudgment, maybe us falling asleep a little bit. But I mean, that's just that mental breakdown or that misjudgment really did cost us. And they didn't really give us time to recover. They almost immediately, I think, scored the second goal. And for you, I saw some guys in the Patreon chat. They were thinking we kind of fell asleep a little bit on that. I really thought it was a good ball from Peters and a good finish again, but they just seemed to cut our defense out with that cross. But what did you make of the second goal?
Yeah, I think I do agree with you. I don't think the cross from Eric Peters has actually been given enough credit. It was a brilliant ball in and a brilliant finish, but this is Burnley. You know exactly the way they want to play. You know they're going to try and play high balls in from deep. And yet again, we were well aware of the team that we were up against, but we did absolutely nothing to stem the delivery from Peters, and it's not like we made an effort to halt Barnes. He just ghosted in behind Vestergaard, and he was unmarked. He had all the time in the world to see the ball drop onto his foot, and then Gunn's got no chance. So it's just that typical lackadaisical defending that has seen us fall into relegation battles in the past 2 seasons, and we have to eradicate it, because otherwise it's going to be another season of it. But yeah, it was a good goal from Burnley's perspective, but it's nothing that Saints shouldn't have expected. It was nothing that was un-Burnley-like. It was predictable, and it was, in my opinion, avoidable. So it's a frustrating goal to concede, and when that second goal goes in, the whole team's then deflated after being stunned by the opener, and that was it for us.
Yeah, at that point, I don't think there was any hope of us getting anything out of the game. At least from what I had seen so far. I mean, I can hope, really, but that would have been all it was. But based on what I had seen throughout the day, just the body language of all the players once that happened, it didn't look like it was going to come off for us today, and that was just what it was. But eventually, there are some changes made. Obafemi comes in for Ings. We switched to a back four with Højbjerg coming in for Stevens, and Buffal comes on to replace Adams, which the announcers here, or the commentators, I should say, were a little bit shocked with. But I'm not sure Adams had the best game, and I'm not sure it's his fault or whose fault it is. But I don't think he didn't look as maybe dynamic, or as I'm not exactly sure what words to use, but he didn't look like he had it as much as he had during some of those early preseason matches.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it was a combination of things. I think that Adams, if he sticks away that early chance, maybe it's a different story. Mm-hmm. But I think that ultimately, Burnley's two central defenders, Ben Mee and James Tarkowski, had very, very good games. They were very strong. They read the game well, and they did keep our strikers quiet. I think that Adams did look energetic, and he did get himself about a bit, but it wasn't a good debut for him. And in all honesty, I think he should have been sent off. I think we were quite lucky to escape that. So if there's one positive to take from the game, it's that we'll have Che Adams for the next three. But I mean, we might not have been so lucky on another day.
Yeah, and they didn't even give him a yellow for that. I mean, there was nothing, and that challenge was definitely high and late, and looked to be out of frustration. So you kind of line all those things up and think, man, he probably should have been gone there. But I'm glad he's still around. The third goal, I don't even know what really to say about it. I think at that point the wheels have completely fallen off, and I think all of us probably just wanted the game to end, if for not to get any worse. And I don't know. Do you have thoughts on the third goal, or is there anything to be said there? You
see goals like this scored quite often in the Premier League when a team's 2-0 down or 3-0 down, and they kind of pack in. In all honesty, they just sort of there's sort of that acknowledgement that there's no way back into the match, and although it's not good, it does happen. And Bertrand lost his focus completely. He shied away from the challenge, and it was sloppy. You expect more from an experienced head like that, and a player who's been reliable for us over a number of years. But credit to Goodmanson, because it was an excellent finish, and he gave Gunn no chance. So that third goal was pathetic defending from us, but you've got to give Burnley credit as well, because the 3 goals that they did score were all very well taken.
And I mean, people online jumping on Ryan Bertrand for that, I think it's acceptable to give him some stick for the way he went about that and pulling out of the challenge, and even just not putting his body in front of Goodmanson. And even if you concede a free kick there, you take a yellow card, whatever it is, hanging the leg out there and then going down. I mean, granted, he probably did get racked across the shins, but it was a fair challenge, I think. Is it fair to I think it's fair to criticize him for what he did there and how that happened. I don't think it's necessarily that, I'm not quite sure he's not the best left back we have. I think he's still the guy that's going to be starting, that needs to be starting, and I'm comfortable with him starting, especially in a system whether we're going to be playing wing backs or just a standard back four. I think he is the best guy for the job, and I'm not sure if you agree with that, or if you think we should have done something in the transfer window to kind of give him some more competition.
No, I think I am still comfortable with Bertrand, but I don't put it this way. If we were to sell him next summer, or if we were to have sold him in the summer and we were to replace him with a younger, more intense left back, I don't think I'd have lost any sleep over it, so to speak. I think that he is still one of our best players. I do think he's still a reliable player, but for, I think, a couple of seasons now, he's not really been on top form. Whether you put that down to other factors such as the management or not, I don't know, but errors like yesterday can't happen again. We know he is a capable player. We know he's good at both ends of the pitch, but that kind of casual, overconfident, occasionally even arrogant approach has been on show a few times sort of throughout his Saints career, and as long as he nips it in the bud and he ensures that it doesn't happen again, we'll be fine, because he is a very good player and we do need him to play well if this system is to work, because Hasenhüttl depends on his fullbacks, especially in the system that involves wing-backs, to be crucial, to be outlets down the wing, and we need him to be on top form.
Yeah, and I think maybe that display that he had yesterday, especially for the third goal, that's the type of thing that loses you the captaincy in the long run. You can't have that from your captain. And that's something that needs to be, I think, corrected. And I guess that's also just, I think that's just how I approach things. I think I would have expected a little bit more from him, and I like him. I like Ryan Bertrand a ton. And like you said, I think he is, fully capable, but I think that he does have a history of kind of doing stuff like that, which we need to correct. And hopefully, you wonder what Hasenhüttl said in the dressing room afterwards, and what that ride home was like. It couldn't have been a super pleasant time for anybody. Because even afterwards, I just rewatched the post-match interview with him on the Southampton website, and as Adam Blackmore said, he's maybe the most dejected I've ever seen him just not happy. There's no not even any kind of angry energy there. It's just kind of monotone and I don't know, just relatively just almost like he was shell shocked as to what happened, because that team that we saw just didn't seem to look like the same team we had seen throughout preseason and what we had hoped for, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm very much of the same opinion. I've not seen Ralph look like that ever. He seemed as shell shocked as the rest of us as to what we'd seen. You know, optimism was of the essence. We were all very sort of positive, and you know, I for one actually thought we were going to win yesterday.
Yeah.
So to come out with a performance like that was shocking, and it was really, really surprising, I think, for a lot of people, including him, because he's a meticulous man, and I'm sure that the planning for the match was as it usually is. You know, very, very good and very in depth, but it looked like we didn't have a clue what team we were up against. We weren't aware of their strengths, and as such, Burnley took advantage.
Yeah. Now, does anybody in the team come out of this game having impressed you at all, or because I'm not sure anybody. I look at anybody's performance yesterday and say, like, you know, at least, you know, they showed me something, and I tend to try to look for some sort of positive, but. Anybody yesterday come out, whether it was even Buffal or Obafemi coming on later on, anybody kind of, I don't know, impress you at all?
Impressed? No, not at all. I thought Redmond was probably the best of a bad bunch, but he was probably the only player who was, you know, a 5 out of 10 and not a 4 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10, if you know what I mean. So it's yeah, I'm not drawing any positives from yesterday, if I'm honest.
No, I think that's fair. I think I mean, like I said, I can hope that somebody else saw it, but I didn't either. So no problem there. But let's move on. Obviously, Liverpool comes to town next weekend. That's not an easy game. They looked pretty damn good on Friday night. I mean, I'm not going to look forward to the end of the month and going into the first international break and think, you know, we're going to be without any points or anything else. But we definitely have to play better than yesterday. If we play like yesterday, it'll be last season all over again. But I think it's too early to do that. And at least for me, I think this is when you just kind of move on. Like you say, that wasn't great. We need to do better and learn from it. And I think, I mean, this is maybe naive of me to say, but I think we will look better against Liverpool even if we lose. I don't think we will. The scoreline might wind up being the same, but I think we as a team will look better simply because the style of football that they play allows Ralph's style to be shown a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I really do. I think that it is against teams like Burnley who sit back and soak up pressure and don't rely on moving forward with the ball that we do struggle against, because we're unable to press. We can't play as intensely as we like to. Whereas Liverpool will come out and they will be expected to dominate the game, and they will be the ones who are likely to play on the front foot. So it might suit us better with a more counter-attacking approach, and that could well see the likes of, I don't know, perhaps Gineppo, Buffal, maybe even Shane Long come in, because, you know, we're going to need that pace on the break, and we're going to need to play vertical, penetrative football, because we won't get many chances against Liverpool. So when we do, we have to make the most of them. So I don't see us getting anything from that game. Mm-hmm. It is something of a free hit, but I wouldn't say that they're unbeatable. I think we saw against Norwich when they played them on Friday night that they're not perfect. They are vulnerable. They did surrender a few chances, and if Saints can create a few and maybe cause them some problems, then we could make it an uncomfortable game for them. But it all comes down to ifs and buts, and we can't be like we were yesterday, because it can be a great score.
Sure, absolutely. All right, well, let's move on. And we talked for the season preview, and you had asked you to kind of rate the window at the time when we spoke, which I think was about a week before the season or a little over a week, I think, before the window closed. But at that point, you had given them a 5 out of 10 for the team, and I think my rating at that point was maybe a little higher than that, but not much. Now jumping to the end of the window, we can't bring anybody else in. We can still have some people leave, which I think is something that needs to happen. But where do we stand now, having brought Danzo in, addressed maybe the center back issue at least a little bit. He's still young, but we'll talk about that. But how do we do? Has your rating changed of the club's performance in the transfer window at all?
Yeah, it absolutely has. And I put a tweet out when Danzo signed, perhaps prematurely, saying that it had gone from like a 5 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. Maybe it's an 8 or a 9, but equally I look at it and I think that we had some key areas that we needed to strengthen in the summer. I looked at it and I thought it was a centre-back, striker, and maybe a winger. And we did all of that. We did strengthen, in my opinion, the 3 areas that were in need of it. So I still look at the transfer window as a success. Maybe we're lacking a holding midfielder with Lamina likely to leave still, but I thought the business was good. We significantly strengthened the attacking options, and Danzo will be an upgrade on the options sort of currently at Ralph's disposal at the back.
I mean, with Danzo coming in late, he was never going to start on Saturday, but he is young. I wouldn't say Augsburg had a very great season last year, but do you see him coming in and taking the place of? I guess where do you see him slotting in the back line? Do you see him coming in as and playing the middle of that center back 3, or do you foresee him maybe taking the place of Vestergaard on the left, or what do you see happening?
I think logic would suggest that in a back 5 we would see him come in for Jack Stevens, perhaps as the central defender in the back 3, because Bednarek and Vestergaard have tended to operate on the right and the left respectively. But after the game against Burnley, I think if Danzo is to come in against Liverpool, I can see Vestergaard dropping out. Danzo's a mobile defender, he's quite dynamic, whereas Vestergaard is probably our slowest defender. He on the turn he's not especially good.
No.
And against Liverpool, who have got an incredible front 3, packed with pace and dynamism and energy and trickery, he could struggle. It would be a bit of a baptism of fire to give Danzo his debut in the Premier League against Liverpool, because you're up against a world-class trio of attacking players. But I look at it and I think that we do need that dynamic kind of defender. So if I'm honest, I wouldn't be surprised to see Yoshida, Danzo and Bednarek start against Liverpool, because Yoshida in for Stevens maybe to provide a more experienced, reliable head, but Danzo in for Vestergaard to provide a bit more dynamism and a little bit more quality if we do need to track back, if a ball's been played in behind. I think we've just got maybe a better chance of coping with Liverpool's attacking flair with a player who can, at the very least match Salah or Mane for pace should it be required.
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly what I was going to say, is I could see that, Bednarek staying in and Yoshida coming in essentially, and maybe Danzo playing on the left. And I think that would be, I mean, you think just in terms of matching up against Liverpool, that might not be a bad option. But also, I'm not even sure he's come in and trained and done anything with the team yet. So I don't know if he'll be ready for that, or if Hasenhüttl will be ready for that or comfortable with that. But he seems to meet kind of all the requirements that Hasenhüttl is looking for and that the club is looking for. And I think looking at the transfer window, I think the club has maybe returned to having that clear strategy, that clear kind of idea of what they want, what they're looking for, and going after those players. And I think all the players that we signed fit that profile very, very well. And I think that mostly the outgoing players, I think that's a holdover from kind of previous regimes, and maybe giving in to a manager who wants a player or something like that I think is going to take time to rectify. But I think for me, I would have, and maybe this is unpopular, just wrong, if I was given the choice between getting Danzo in or clearing out all of the deadwood, all of the players that are sucking up wages and that are not going to make the lineup and not going to even play, I would have taken getting rid of them, because I think that hampers us going forward in future windows when we need to make an addition, when we need to make a signing, where we want to make maybe have the chance to sign that player that's going to cost you a little bit more, and you can't do it simply because you have all these other guys on there. I would have taken getting rid of kind of clearing out, even in a sense what we did with Jordy Classy, where you terminate the contract and call it good and he moves on. I think I would have taken that over signing the center back. Not that I'm not happy with doing it, because I definitely think that the center back was an issue. But I don't know. Do you? Does that make sense to you, or is that just me being an idiot?
No. I think that's completely understandable. I personally, for me, signing a centre-back was the priority for the window. So I think we share the same view that it is great that we've finally got one in. But as you said, the deadwood that is there, it just lingers. Fraser Forster's just lingered for a couple of years. And Wesley Hoot is still on our books. Elianusi, awful last season, still on our books. Guido Carija, we can't seem to shift him. These players are taking up so much wages. And they have no use here. There's no purpose for them. And it might sound harsh, but they have to go. And if we are to move forward as a club, we need to trim that squad. Ralph's often said that he likes to work with 21, 22 players. And right now, I imagine we've got somewhere close to 30. Uh-huh. And there are still players here who don't fit the style, don't fit the ethos, and are just simply turning up to training, picking up their pay packet and going home. We can't have that. Yeah. We're not... Top clubs don't accept that. And this isn't me saying we're a top club, or even that we have aspirations to be a top club, even if we should. But that isn't acceptable at any level. And in an ideal world, these players would go. But quite rightly, like you said, we are paying for the mistakes of the previous regime, and we can't shift these players. So we've only got ourselves to blame, but it's frustrating nonetheless.
Yeah. I guess last question on this part of it, but how much of an improvement was this window over windows of previous seasons? And how far back do you have to go for us to really say to find a window that was as good as this for the club?
Yeah, so I think this window was pretty good in comparison to the others. I think that the players who we've signed clearly do fit a style and an ethos that Hassan Hüttel's employing, which is different to previous windows when we've simply signed a player for their individual quality rather than their suitability. But these are young players and time will tell. We're going to need to be patient. I think that over some windows there's been a case of we signed 2 or 3 good players, but then there have been 1 or 2 that have either been a bit questionable, unnecessary, or they've gone on to be awful. But time will tell. We need to be patient with these young players. I think that the 3 we have signed are good. I think that there is definitely the potential that they can emerge as key parts of our team for years to come. But it's very difficult because they do still have a lot to prove. A lot of them are still inexperienced, and we need to see how they adapt to the Premier League and how they adapt to the demands and the needs that we currently have.
Yeah, nothing's a guarantee, right? Like none of these guys are guaranteed to succeed or improve, or some of them may wind up sucking up wages and being awful. But we just have to kind of hope that the scouting team has nailed it on as they did so many times before. You kind of go back to windows under Koeman and things like that. It seemed that we hit every player, even if they were somewhat inconsistent. Even if Mane needed some time to bed in, and Tadic had seasons where he wasn't maybe as great. Overall, I think all of those players were good signings, and they definitely made the football enjoyable to watch, which I think we will get to as time goes on. But for me now, would you mind jumping into some of the listener questions? We have quite a few. We definitely won't get to all of them, but we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. People can send in questions. They can get in contact on Twitter or Instagram at SFCDELL_IVERY, or respond to the post on Facebook. And patrons of the show also get priority for having their questions answered, in addition to having a private chat and an extra podcast episode per month. So we have a question from a patron, and we can start with that, if that's okay. Yep. This one comes from Millard505 on Instagram, who is one of the patrons of the show. He says, do you think Danzo can come in and make a difference in defense straight away, or do you think Ralph will introduce him slowly across the season? We kind of talked about it. How likely do you think it is that he comes into the team next week against Liverpool?
I think it wouldn't have been likely if we'd maybe lost 1-0 yesterday. But I think that after what we saw at Turf Moor, I think Ralph will probably look to integrate him as soon as possible. Whether or not he can make an immediate impact, I don't know. We have some tough fixtures, and he's just 20 years old. So it's a big pressure to put on him. I think he will improve our defence, but patience is going to be necessary. He's a young player in a new league, working with different teammates and new systems. So we can't expect him to come in and be Van Dijk. We have to take time with him. But I think if I'm in Ralph's shoes, I'm putting him in against Liverpool because, quite simply, it can't get any worse, can it?
No, absolutely not. And a young center back, that's one of those places where I think young attackers are allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to lose the ball when you're dribbling at people and running at people, or you're allowed to misplace a pass, and it happens all the time. Even if you watch Manchester City or Liverpool, they misplace passes and lose the ball in these kind of little intricate 1-2s and things like that, and that's fine. That's acceptable. But as a center back, generally, that's one of those things where you just need to clear the ball away. Or at least that's old school defending, is just get the ball away and keep it simple. But that is one of those things where you guys actually reach their peak, I think, later on in their career. So to put in a young center back like that is definitely asking maybe for some trouble. But I think it's very likely to happen, and we'll see. Hopefully he comes in and just does the little things right, and we'll all be happy and move on. And I just want him to have some confidence going forward. I don't want him to come in and just be dejected as if he has a bad first match out against one of the best, I guess, the champions of Europe. So, there it is. Dan, who's at Holy Hoiberg, asks his thoughts on playing a back five even against teams like Burnley, where you'll know you have the majority of ball possession. Does that concern you, or is that just Ralph making the best of the squad that he has available and not maybe trusting the defenders to be able to do it in a back four?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think that it does come towards that trust in the defenders. I think that it's been clear since he came in that he's always sort of favoured or wanted to favour moving towards the back four. He wants to play 4-2-2-2. We're well aware of that, but I think that we do need to take games against Burnley as though we are the favourites. We do need to look at it and think these are the games that we need to win or not lose at the very, very least if we are going to climb up the table. Personally, I don't see Burnley climbing higher than 15th in the league this season. So for them to have beaten us 3-0, very concerning. That's a shocking result. It's awful. It's not acceptable. And it was humiliating yesterday. I felt embarrassed. So I think that moving away from the five at the back against teams like that, or maybe on a more permanent basis, could be better, because I'm not sure that it actually does give us more solidity, because it does vacate a little bit more space in midfield, as you quite rightly alluded to earlier on. And we can get played through quite easily sometimes, whereas with a more narrow shape like the 4-2-2-2, with regards to, holding the midfield a little bit tighter and constraining the space, I think that we'd be a little bit more resolute defensively. So it's finding a balance. It's finding the players who can play in a back four and who are better in the back five. It's also finding the balance in the midfield. But against teams like Burnley, yeah, I agree. We do need to take the game to them a little bit more. And sometimes that might involve changing our approach and not playing the way we do. Because as I've said, if you're relying on a long ball to initiate a counter press, it's not going to work, because they are the best long ball team in the division. So Ralph is an intelligent man. He's a very, very good manager. He's tactically astute, and he will see these things. It's just about adapting. And the Premier League, if you stand still, you will get left behind. And you have to adapt. You have to be proactive, and you have to make sure that when you play a team, you need to adapt to ensure that your strengths are being utilised the best, but you're also exploiting the opposition's weakness. We played into Burnley's strengths yesterday, and if we do it against Liverpool, we're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from a Burnley fan, actually, and I thought I was surprised to get it, and I doubt that Johnny Lipton is going to listen, but I think it'll benefit us all to talk about it a little bit here. So he is at JLUP1980. He says, Burnley fan here. I was chatting to a few Saints fans before the game, a lovely bunch, by the way, about how I thought you were going to be mid-table this season. Going off today, I'd say Adams, Ings, and Redmond are too similar, though. Have you got an effective plan B? And honestly, maybe something I hadn't thought of too much. I think that I tend to think of Ings as someone who will drop a little bit deeper, who will get on the ball, who will create chances, maybe more than the other, maybe more than Adams, not necessarily more than Redmond. I think Redmond, although he can play centrally, I think is better coming in from the left. And I don't know. I can see Ings and Redmond kind of alternating, kind of playing behind the other two, maybe. But I would expect Adams to kind of play more of that central striker role. But looking at our options and things like that, is there a plan B for days like Burnley away where we can't seem to initiate the press because of the way the opposition is playing? And do we have a way to combat that? Do we have a target man, which I think we've talked about before? What is our plan B if we have one, and if not, what do you think Hasenhüttl does in this situation next time?
Yeah, I think that there are sort of two elements to answer that question. I think that firstly, the plan B is personnel. I think that we do have different styles of player. I think, as you said, Redmond likes to drop deep a little bit more, and he's a technically gifted attacker. Same kind of goes for Ings, but in Gineppo, for example, off the bench, you can bring in a player who favours running at defenders, someone who is, very, very quick, very direct. And in Buffon, you've got a player who can beat a man and break a line with trickery and with that guile and with that dribbling quality. So in terms of personnel, I think we do have enough to have a plan B. But the other element of it is that Hasenhüttl historically has preferred his plan B to be flexibility and tactical adaptability. So he likes his teams to be comfortable with changing systems in games. He likes to have 2, 3, sometimes even 4 strings to his team's bow. So reverting to 4 at the back yesterday was probably the plan B. But if Hasenhüttl probably wants that to be the plan A, but he doesn't maybe feel as though he's in a position to do that. But that tactical shift and that reverting to a different change probably came a bit too late, and the game was already lost.
Yeah, I think that you look at the number of attackers we have, and it's been an issue in the recent seasons where we haven't had those options, where it's been kind of we could change the midfield, we can change the defenders around, but the attacking options just weren't there. And I think that's changed now. I think with Buffon coming back, like you said, and offering you something different than you have, I think Redmond's going to be in the team each and every week unless he's hurt. I think he has nailed that down and earned that, and I hope that he continues to. I think I am at least expecting him to continue to progress, and not necessarily as much as he did from during last season. I don't think that's necessarily a fair expectation. I don't think people just make jump leaps and bounds year after year after year, but a little bit of improvement from him, and learning how to work with Adams and Ings a little bit better, I think will be good. But I think like you said, the options that we have there, they have plenty of pace, whether it's Obafemi or Long or whoever it is that comes in, and to chase balls down and do those kind of things, I think we'll be all right. So yeah, I think we have the personnel there to do it. Let's see. I'm looking at some of the other questions. Do you see any of the other ones that you are dying to answer? I think we talked about some of them. It said, LJ_Cecil from Instagram says, what went wrong? The first half seemed promising, then we fell off. I think we talked about that a little bit. Ben Malik says, how well do you think Saints will do against Man United and Liverpool, knowing that we lost 3-0 to Burnley? I guess looking forward to those 2 first home games of the season, do you see anything coming from those, or do you think those are let's just get them out of the way now and move on with the rest of our season?
I think the Liverpool game I'd always looked at as a bit of a write-off. I've always kind of looked at Liverpool and thought, they are the champions of Europe. You can't expect us to get anything there. But I kind of fancied our chances against United. I think that there's a sense of mental fragility in that team still. And they're going to be a bit of an unknown quantity. But they've made some good signings, and following yesterday, it's hard to look at a 3-0 defeat against Burnley to then confidently look at United and say, yeah, we'll do them. So they look a little bit scarier on paper after the game yesterday, but we do tend to step up against the bigger teams, and as we've said, we play better in space, and Liverpool and United won't sit back and soak up pressure. They'll play on the front foot, look to take the game to us, and maybe that'll afford us some more opportunities in the final third.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have not kicked off their game yet. They will play a little later on at the time of recording, so we'll have to see how they go about their business. I saw somebody respond to the thing on. This is the last thing before we have one more question, but somebody responded to the Instagram post that I put up yesterday asking for the mini match reaction. So 3 words just to kind of sum up the match. There were a lot of curse words in there and everything else, but somebody said Hasenhüttl under pressure. And to me, I don't know if that's just an overreaction, and I don't want to minimize anybody's opinion. That's not what I'm trying to do, but I think it's entirely too early to say anything like that. I don't think Hasenhüttl's under any pressure. I think the board and the team are fully invested in the project that he is putting together, and I think they are on board with it. And I think he's on board with what the club wants to do. What's your opinion on that? Is he under pressure at all, based on if we have more performances like that, even finishing out this month and going into the first international break? If we get there with 0 points, is he going to be? He's not going to be sacked, is he?
No. No. I don't think he's under pressure at all. I think that the Premier League is an unforgiving division, and it doesn't take any prisoners. But if we continue to play the way we are, then there are fundamental issues, because you look towards the back end of last season at how we played, and it's completely different. So if you think Hasenhüttl's under pressure, I'd like to see who you think would come in and do any better.
Sure. This is a guy who was in the Champions League, right? Second place in the Bundesliga. Yeah. He chose to come to a relegation threatened team in the middle of the season when nobody, would have wanted that job, and say, yeah, I'll do it, and did it. And I don't know. I can't see us getting anybody better for some time. Anyway. Yeah, no,
I agree. I think that you can criticise fairly anyone. Anyone can be criticised, and I think I speak for the vast majority of Saints fans and say that we all do love Hasenhüttl, and we think that he's great. I think he did some things wrong yesterday. I think that he didn't adapt to what the game required, but I still think he's a fantastic manager. And in all honesty, I think we're extremely lucky to have him, and I think he can do a lot better than us. So I would, if ever it gets to the stage where Hasenhüttl is under pressure, I'd encourage you to be careful what you wish for, because I don't see us getting anyone who will play a more exciting brand of football when he can, and a manager who gets the club and gets the history and gets the ethos that have been long-standing over a number of years more than he does. And I do still think that he is the best man for the job. And I think that it will get to the stage where we're gutted to lose him instead of calling for his head.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question here from Jim, who's at Hoiberg Season. He said, would be interested to know how Luke Osman got into writing and how I got into making podcasts. I think I've asked you this way a long time ago, but just for anybody who wasn't present early on in the podcast, how did you get into writing in the first place? Did you just enjoy, English class and writing, nice compositions about, British poets and things like that, or what got you into it?
Yeah, so I'm 19 now, and when I was 15 years old, I got into writing a little bit more in my spare time. I'd always quite enjoyed creative writing in English classes when I was at school, but I started up my own blog to talk about Saints. It was the summer before Koeman's second season, so 2015. I got some good feedback from some people on Facebook and Twitter, kind of just trying to get my work out there where I could, and then Read Southampton was brought to my attention, and since then I've just sort of climbed up the ladder at the company and continued to keep going and into other publications. So I decided that it was the career path that I wanted to follow, and writing about football was a passion of mine, and that's how I really got into it. It was blending what I perceived to be one of my academic strengths with an interest of mine, and I'm fortunate now that I'm in a position where I can write about football, and in particular write about Saints, and get paid for it. It's a nice job to have, and I'm very fortunate to the people who have given me the opportunity to do so. So hopefully I can continue bringing Saints fans particularly good content, enjoyable content that they can resonate or even disagree with, because ultimately we all share the same love and the same desire for the club to do well, and in doing so we all have different opinions on how that can be achieved. So the debate's good, and if people like my work, then I'm I'm doing something right. And that's the main thing. I just want to make sure that my writing is of a high standard, first and foremost, but something that our fans can come to and can click on one of my articles and know that it will be a decent read. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. And as I've said, if anyone wants to hop on Read Southampton and have their own say, they're more than welcome to. Just get in contact, and that's what it's all about. It's all about giving fans a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of those things that when I publish something, when I do this podcast, I ask myself every single week, like, is this a show that I would want to listen to? Would I enjoy turning this on and getting the stuff that I'm getting, whether it's, and that goes to everything from how the audio is presented and dealt with to the type of questions that I try to ask, to the, even questions like this where I genuinely enjoy hearing kind of how you got into things, because I think that's important, and I want to have a conversation about it. And I think sometimes people think that I had actually a couple of really horrible emails come through to just prove you're not going to make everybody happy with what you do. But earlier this week, just after the preview episode, actually, so that was great. But I mean, you're not going to make everybody happy, but I don't necessarily consider myself an expert. I consider myself somebody who's learning about the team and learning about the game constantly. And I'm a latecomer to the game of football, and I really enjoy learning about stuff. So the fact that I get to learn about the team and different styles of play, and when a new manager comes in or a new player comes in, all this stuff, that is what I really enjoy about it. But I ask myself kind of, I think you probably do too, just, would I want to read this? Is this something I would enjoy doing? And if that's the case, then I'm proud of what I put out. I think you are proud of what you put out. And whether people agree or disagree, kind of creating that space for people to have that discussion, I think is extremely important. So, in terms of how I got into making this podcast, at the time when I was, at the time that I started it, there were none. It was the one that had been around for several years, I think 5 years of I think monthly episodes, had come to cease to exist based on just the movement of people around Europe. And I was a heavy podcast listener. I don't watch very much TV except for usually football. And so a lot of my entertainment comes through podcasts. I enjoy Football Weekly. I enjoyed the Totally Football Show. I enjoy a lot of other podcasts that don't have anything to do with football. So the idea that there wasn't one, I had found some not some free time, but I had switched jobs at that point and I wasn't grading papers constantly, and I needed to pick up a hobby. And so I set out, and I think I took like 6 months of reading books about podcasting and listening to podcasts about making podcasts before I started. And I think it's come a long way. Still think I have a lot to learn about both podcasting and football, but that's where that comes from me. And this is I don't know. I get nervous. I get butterflies every time before I call somebody. Generally I type the same thing every single week. Like, is it okay to call you? And you say yes, or they say yes, or somebody says, give me 5 minutes or whatever. And I have butterflies the whole time. And it's something that I enjoy. And I enjoy it just as much as I do watching Saints, which is nice, because you mentioned you get to combine your passion of writing and Saints, and I get to do the same thing with the podcast. So that's where that comes from. So anyway, Luke, thank you so much for sharing and for taking the time to come on the show and talk about what we thought was going to be a nice result and turned out not to be so.
No, thank you very much for having me. Hopefully, as the season progresses, you get to host podcasts and talk about loads of convincing wins rather than the comprehensive defeats.
Yeah, it'll happen, I'm sure. And if it only happens, 10 times this year, I'll just savor it all that much more. And maybe that's giving us too much credit, but we'll see. Anyway, one more time for people who want to get in contact with you, whether it's just to check out your articles or to potentially write. You're on Twitter at Luke Osman RS, and your email address is escaping me off the top of my head, but if you could let everybody know. Yeah,
so my Twitter is, as you just said. You can find the bulk of my articles and write for us on www.readsouthampton.com. But my email address, if you want to get in contact that way, is luke@freshpressuk.com.
All right. And I will put links to all three of those things in the show notes so people can click directly from there and get to it. But Luke, hopefully we'll talk to you later on in the season. And yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you, mate.
And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Luke Osman. You can find him on Twitter at LukeOsmanRS. You can get in touch with Read Southampton, where you can find his writing at Read Southampton. And if you're interested in contacting him via email, maybe because you want to write for Read Southampton, you can do that at luke@freshpressuk.com. Links to all those are in the show notes. Do not hesitate to get in touch with them. And once again, Luke, it's always fantastic to chat with you. Thanks again for coming on, even after such an uninspiring game. Special thanks this week also goes out to Jeremy Orr. Thank you again for riding shotgun all the way down to Los Angeles. Thanks for driving, first of all, from your house in the Bay Area all the way down to Santa Maria to then get in the car and sit in traffic for several hours to not watch Josh Sims play in MLS. But nonetheless, the stadium was fun. The drive was fun. The conversation was great. Please keep some of those things I told you a secret. Please do. If you're interested in following this show on social media, you can do that at SFCDELL_IVERY on Twitter and Instagram. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. There is no underscore in the Facebook address. If you haven't done so yet, you can subscribe to this show wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or somewhere else. You can do that. The easiest way is to head over to southamptondelivery.com and click play. Click to the links there. You can subscribe. Try to make it super easy. The logo for the show comes courtesy of Matt Beeling. Our partner page is the Southampton page. And there you can get all of your Southampton FC news and needs. Stay up to date with everything that's going on at the club. Follow them on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The links are in the show notes. And if you're interested in supporting the show above and beyond listening and sharing with friends and maybe leaving an iTunes review or two, actually you can only do it once, you can do that at patreon.com/SFC Delivery. But please know that is not a requirement. You simply listening is what it's all about. And actually what it's all about is talking about this team and looking forward to next week, even though it is Liverpool. Eventually it will get better. I hope. Until next time, remember that together, we march on. God, Finnegan, you stink.